This week on Quality Digest Live, how has COVID-19, the coronavirus, impacted the supply chain, particularly if you do business in China? And how can digital manufacturing help mitigate supply chain issues? Well, we'll find out when we come back. Welcome back to Quality Digest Live. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest. Okay, although the numbers are constantly changing from day to day, it's fairly safe to say that in terms of just sheer numbers, China has been the hardest hit by COVID-19, the coronavirus. Roughly speaking, there have been about 111,000 reported cases and about 3,900 deaths in China. And as awful as the human tragedy has been, and it has been an awful tragedy, there have also been huge economic effects on China's manufacturing sector. According to the BBC, and this was about a week ago, China's official measure of manufacturing activity, the Purchasing Managers Index, the PMI, had dropped to 35.7, down from 50. In January. That's a pretty precipitous drop. And according to Bloomberg Economics, Chinese factories were operating at only 60 to 70% of capacity. That's a huge drop in capacity. Analysts predict that the impact of the coronavirus on the Chinese will most likely be felt for years to come. And keep in mind that China is responsible for about 1/3 of the world's manufacturing companies that have their manufacturing done in China. So those companies within that supply chain, countries like the United States, are going to be impacted as well. Our guest today is Jennifer Grant, Marketing Manager Europe for Heisel, a Shanghai-based manufacturer that specializes in machining, injection molding, fabrication, stamping, casting, and mold making. Hi, Jennifer. Welcome to the show. And really, just so sorry for what you guys are going through there in China. I know it's been just awful. I'm not sure how bad it is in Shanghai, but certainly other parts of the country have felt it really, really well.
Hi, Dirk. Thank you for having me on the show. Yes. It is essentially a pretty bad situation here, but it is on the mend, and we have seen significant improvements in the last few weeks, definitely.
Yeah, and was Shanghai particularly hard hit in any way, or was that completely different part of the country for where the worst of it was?
So luckily we are quite far away from where the main area that was hit is, which is Wuhan. So we are significantly far away, but it was still hit. You know, we have had quite a large number of cases, and we've still felt the repercussions of the cases that happened in Wuhan.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about Heisel. What does your company do?
Great, yes. So Heisel is essentially a manufacturer of machine tools in Asia. We are based in Shanghai, and we provide a platform where individuals and companies can have their parts manufactured from the comfort of their own home. So as you rightly said before, we specialize in machining, injection molding, casting, stamping, and mold making.
And from your perspective, what is the impact of COVID-19 virus on China's manufacturing perspective? I'm sorry, manufacturing sector.
This is an interesting question, and certainly one that has been discussed and continues to be discussed at length in recent weeks. It is clear that COVID-19 has had an impact on China's manufacturing sector, generally speaking. Last month, we witnessed government policies implement the forced closure of a large majority of factories throughout the country, which essentially halted economic production, except at hospitals and pharmaceutical companies. The disruption caused to the manufacturing supply chains was quite significant.
Okay, and how does this, this reminds me of the SARS epidemic, obviously huge, many years ago. How does this compare to that? And was manufacturing as impacted during that epidemic as it is during this one?
Yeah, COVID-19 has been compared to the SARS epidemic in 2002 to 2003 in terms of its impact. However, we do need to also factor in China's increased influence to our economic ecosystem globally in the last 2 decades. China's economy is now more than 8 times larger what it was then. Therefore, the impact has naturally been on a much larger scale, with many more industries now heavily dependent on China's manufacturing sector.
And what about the impact on the supply chain itself? And I'm thinking, companies here in the United States. What has been the fallout for them?
Good question. I mean, any manufacturing slowdown in one part of the world has a ripple effect on economic activity globally because of regional and global value chains. And China has become the central manufacturing hub for many global business operations. And a slowdown in its production does have repercussions for any given country, depending on how reliant it is on Chinese suppliers. And the almost complete closure of the Chinese economy has definitely taken its toll on US manufacturers through their supply chain. And manufacturers, for example, that use components in their products that are mostly sourced from infected areas such as Wuhan, where over 500 car part manufacturers operate, need to either find alternative sources outside of China or shut down production. So the impact on US companies, I think, has been a great deal.
So I didn't realize. So Wuhan, which was the province that was that is Wuhan? And I'm sorry, is Wuhan a province or is it a city?
So Wuhan is actually a city
A
in a
city.
province.
And you say
Yes.
there's 500 automotive suppliers, U.S. automotive suppliers in Wuhan?
Exactly, over that. So as you can see from that, there's a huge impact on all of those people that source the parts from those manufacturers.
Okay. So do you think this is going to continue to have an effect now that factories are coming back online? I mean, I know, what was it, Foxconn? I think that was off for a while, and then they're back. And I know factories are starting to open up back in China. So is this going to kind of get things back on track quickly? Or are we going to continue to see, as some experts think, this stretching out for a longer period of time?
Interesting one. Yes, I do. I do think the forced closure of production facilities in China has and will continue to have an effect on the US and indeed Europe, where we are likely to see the temporary shutdown of thousands of assembly and manufacturing plants by mid March. And the most vulnerable companies would probably be those that depend heavily on factories in China for parts and products. So I do think, yes, the effect will last definitely into the coming year.
Now, for the supply chain, I can think of probably two things that impacted them maybe, and maybe you can clarify this a little bit. One is that the manufacturers are simply closed, they're not running. And the other one was obviously travel restricted to and from China, so that maybe I'm a manufacturer here in the United States, I buy parts or have parts manufactured in China. I normally like to go over there to meet with the manufacturer to make sure that things are going the way that I want. So was the supply chain issue more of manufacturers being closed or more not being able to go and sit in on the manufacturing process itself?
And are relevant here. So, manufacturers being closed definitely play a key role. Events such as the SARS epidemic, Iceland's volcano eruption, Japan's earthquake and tsunami in 2011, these all led companies to increase the amount of inventory they are keeping on hand compared to before. However, this is typically around 15 days worth of inventory. So, even if companies carried an increase amount of stock due to the Chinese holiday, this would allow them to cover suppliers' demand for around a month, depending on the supply chain strategy. But after the extended closure of factories during February and even into March, it's likely this disruption to the supply of components will result in manufacturers having to stop production. So I do think that the fact that manufacturers were closed did play a big role. Now, I also think that clients not being able to visit the manufacturers does also play a part. Many clients typically come to visit the factory to approve a prototype prior to full production. In this case, right now, they're not able to do that. So it does cause another issue. They're not able to carry out quality checks or visit suppliers to see their capabilities and capacities to complete the given project.
Um, refer to my notes here. Okay, so what challenges are what manufacturing challenges are companies facing right now because of COVID-19, and how would they go about solving these challenges?
hmm I think alongside the challenge of consumer demand, companies also need to navigate supply chain challenges. Given the relatively quick economic restart in China, many companies are focused on temporary stabilization measures rather than moving supply chains out of China. COVID 19 also, for me, serves as an accelerant for companies to make strategic, longer term changes to their supply chains. Stabilizing the supply chain is key, and this stabilization includes updates to companies' demand planning, further network optimization, and essentially searching for and accelerating qualification of new suppliers. So, this will result in a more resilient supply chain. However, this is an ongoing challenge and one which I think digital manufacturing can alleviate.
Okay, so you're kind of leading right into the topic here, digital manufacturing. So um, before we dive into that a little bit further, I think the idea here is that digital manufacturing uh, provides a means of working with manufacturers in China without necessarily having to visit, and kind of gets away from that whole, at least the client visit aspect of it. At least to some extent it does that. And we'll get into the kind of the digital manufacturing here in a second. I mean, it sounds convenient, and I like the idea of digital manufacturing. And for those of our viewers who aren't familiar with it, we'll tell you what digital manufacturing is in just a second. But there's other methods besides technology. I mean, why not just, and I know companies are already looking at this, why not just send your work somewhere else? I mean, in the United States, we could maybe start sending more work to Mexico, or maybe, India or Malaysia, or, simply rather than technology, just, well, I'm just going to start manufacturing somewhere else. Why not do that?
Right, that's right. And for some companies, that is indeed their solution, has been to find some sort of alternative supplier outside of China, for example, in Mexico or East Europe. However, this will require even more time because not only does production need to be moved, also the infrastructure relating to logistics would need to be built. So this is hard to shift in the short term. Digital manufacturing, on the other hand, offers a simple, streamlined solution which will allow minimal disruption to the supply chain, which is essentially what every company is wanting, is the minimal disruption possible to their normal process.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about digital manufacturing. Heisel has obviously a digital solution for manufacturing. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, and then when you're done, we actually have a little clip that'll kind of show our viewers what this would look like. But why don't you just kind of describe the process first for us a little?
Great. So I'll start with digital manufacturing being a sphere which allows companies around the world to source the manufacturing of parts and components from their home. So this relieves the need to travel and source and vet new suppliers, as the digital platform have essentially done this on your behalf. They've sourced and verified thousands of suppliers in terms of capacity, capability, and quality, and put them all together in a database accessible worldwide. So it means any buyer in the world can jump onto this database and have access to this information to manufacturers in over all corners of Asia, specializing in exactly what that project requires. So Heisol, in this sense, provides a higher degree of stability, and the risk is lowered due to having a huge partner network both within and outside of China. So, with the ease of traveling to Asia currently removed and many factories currently operating at low capacity, this strategy is not easily executed for many companies worldwide. So, for engineers and product developers, there's no better time to use a well-established manufacturing platform.
Okay, and I believe we have you have something called the instant quote system, right? And I believe that's what we have a clip of.
We do indeed. So, we have an system whereby you can literally hop onto the website, upload your 3D drawing, and get priced for that part in seconds. So, an automated system can calculate the purchasing cost based on the raw material, processing precision, the manufacturing method, and the purchasing quantity. So it removes factory waiting time and allows a purchase price to be retrieved instantly.
Okay, let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at the clip of
Right?
the user
Yes.
interface on this.
Have machining parts to be quoted? Use our instant quoting system inbuilt into our site. Upload 3D CAD design and get instantly quoted for your part. Within a few minutes of uploading a part online, our automated software reviews them and you get an interactive quote and design analysis with real-time pricing. Need more expertise? We have really smart engineers who can help fine-tune your parts. In just a few clicks, you can get a quote and purchase your parts. Upload your 3D model to get started. Our quoting engine instantly analyzes the part's geometry and properties and then returns cost, lead time, and manufacturability. Easily adjust the process, material, and finish using the intuitive searchable drop-downs. If you want to change material, tolerance, or process, simply update. You can instantly view the updated price by clicking Recalculate. Specify additional requirements and add a drawing if applicable. Easily upload revisions based on design feedback and add more parts into your quote with the Upload 3D Parts button. When you're ready to order, click Place Order. That's it. No more waiting around for quotes to come back. If you have questions, just ask. Upload your 3D models and get started.
That was pretty. That's pretty interesting. So it's really that easy, right? It's really just as easy as uploading. And I believe you said it has to be a 3D file. It can't be a 2D drawing. It has to be a 3D CAD drawing, right?
Right, it has to be a 3D CAD drawing, yes.
Okay.
If you did have a 2D, it's also very simple. You would just simply submit a manual quote and somebody within the day would get back to you with the quote.
And sticking with the 3D drawing, once this is uploaded and you've gotten your quote and you say, sure, I want this, and you hit the buy button, what happens from there? Is this automatically routed to an appropriate machining center or machine shop, or is that a manual process on Heisel's side?
So it is semi-automated, yes. If we had any questions about the design or the buyer wanted to speak to an engineer, that would be very easy to do so, but otherwise it would go straight into production. So production happens very, very fast from the time of quoting and agreeing to the quote to actually getting the parts made and delivered to the buyer. So the lead time is really important to us.
Okay. And so it's automatically, the system knows it's this type of part, it should go to this, are the manufacturers, are they contract manufacturers, or are these machine centers within Heisel itself?
So we have two avenues actually to market. We do offer production with our instant quote through Heisel, where everything is taken care of from start to finish from Heisel. So we take care of the delivery, we quality check, and we will handle everything from start to finish. Whereas you could also go through another supplier, and here you could request for a quote. And in this case, Heisel will match your order to a suitable supplier based on criteria such as precision and material. So the process is automated and intuitive. So buyers are matched to manufacturers based on their manufacturing capabilities, the tolerance of the part, the quantity required, and the lead time.
Okay. And this is kind of interesting to me because I know this has been around for a bit, but I actually haven't experienced it myself. So sticking with the automated part, let's just stay within Heisel. And if I start asking you questions that are just too deep into the weeds, let me know. But so it's automatically routed to, let's say, an appropriate machining center or whatever within Heisel. Is the job automatically run, or is it just sent to a production manager or something, and they take care of booking the job and so forth?
Mm-hmm. That would all depend on the complexity of the project and the part. So some parts, if they're very simple, can be put into a machine that's automated and everything will be done without really any human involvement. Whereas some more complex parts or parts that need a secondary process would have more of a human involvement in it. So it would really depend on the project, but it's getting more and more automated as time goes on.
Automatically gets loaded onto a truck and automatically gets shipped to the United States.
Right.
That's pretty crazy, pretty crazy. You mentioned something earlier. This probably doesn't in terms of travel to China and supply chain issues, this still doesn't really rule out, or does it, people wanting to come there for quality checks and to verify, how your process works and so forth, right? I mean, you're still going to have people wanting to come there for that?
Yes, we are, which is another reason why we should be using platforms like Heisel. What Heisel do is they would quality check if you're going through Heisel for manufacturing. They would have their own quality checks on all of the parts to make sure it's exactly as you ordered. So things like the language barrier, things like checking the prototype, that is all done on the buyer's behalf. So they can rest assured that the part that they order is actually the part that gets delivered. And if there was any discrepancy, we would also fix that and have a new batch sent out.
Okay, all right. Well, I want to end with this one last question. Earlier, I had mentioned the Bloomberg report that Chinese factories were running at only about 60-70% capacity. Is there any estimates on China's side, or do you have an idea about how long it's going to take for capacity to get back up to what they would expect? I mean, are they thinking months or years or weeks?
Certainly, in the last couple of weeks, I have seen significant improvement. So China does continue on its path to recovery. At present, there are undeniable signs of activity. A large percentage of the previously closed factories have restarted and will achieve, I think, a near complete economic restart by mid Q2. At present, around half of small and mid-sized companies have already resumed production, and this fast bounce back was crucial for those companies to remain in business, as their savings can only allow them to survive for so long. So we are seeing a fast bounce back, and I do think in the coming months it will be back to normal production.
Okay. All right. Well, Jennifer Grant, Marketing Manager at Europe for Heisel. Thanks for joining us, and for you and your family and friends, just take care out there.
Thank you very much for having me, Doug. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, very, very interesting product. Thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
do, if you want to learn more about digital manufacturing, visit the Heisel website. There's actually a lot of really interesting information on there, as well as the instant quote. So go check it out. It's a fascinating company, fascinating technology. So that is it for today's Quality Digest Live. As usual, if you have something or someone you would like to bring on the show, send those ideas to us at qdl@qualitydigest.com, and we will do our best to bring them on. Thanks for joining us today, and we will see you next week. So long.